giveaways. I'm going to start giving away the stuff at the end. So up here, I'll just kind of talk about some of the stuff I'm going to give away. So if you stick around, I got a coaxial cable. Don't fight over this one. I got cassette, brand new, unopened. I also have telephone cables, Ethernet cables. You have to untangle them. I have this awesome extra telephone jack cable thing that used to be connected to this MacBook from a long time ago. I got some RAM. I got an AlphaSmart bag. So if anybody has an AlphaSmart bag, I also have looks like FireWire cable, old school FireWire 400 cables. I got Polaroid land film 107 type. If you have a camera, I don't know if it works. All this stuff is you get. Don't know if it. Beat Street VHS tape. That is a really good one here from Tumwater Video after they went out of business. Also got the remix thing for the old iPods, pre-iPod Touch, that uses like a phaser. Oh, if you're still using the AlphaSmart Beam card, I got a Beam here, unopened, it's still in the packaging there. I got a take-up reel, and also got another, not a floppy disk. You know what? The reason why I didn't bring the floppy disk is they had the district info on there, so technically it was purchased with public dollars, even though it never got surplused in like 1990, whenever. So I didn't want to go there, so I left it in the building. The stuff that I have is stuff that's just like non-purchase with district stuff. So I also have another, it looks like a SCSI type AlphaSmart serial port device. I have, for those of you who have the Neos and Neo 2s, I got a Neo responder. I have a Dazzle video card thing that I don't even know if it works in any of the newer operating systems, but if you have a home computer, cool for video. Don't fight it for this one. This is the SCSI cable. So you need the SCSI cable. I'll put those over there. I don't see anyone running for them. What else? Oh yeah, I got a Polaroid camera. I'm going to give away that. I also have a Walkman, cassette Walkman. They were used to those. One more FireWire 400 cable. And oh yeah, the Mr. T commandments. It's it's kind of like an anti-bullying by Mr. T. I wanted to give them away at the end, but you know, if you guys want stuff right now, go ahead. Right now, since we have 2 minutes. Yeah, that is real. I love that Mr. T record. It is sweet. And this one I can't get rid of.
I have treated him on the right by Mr. T, but not Mr. T.
It's good. It's around the same time period. This one I can't get rid of because it's purchased with $11. It's still in our inventory. This is like 2 of the last CD-ROMs that I haven't surplus in my inventory yet, and it's the Essential Raps by Ron Clark. And I played this the other day for my 5th graders in the library, and they went nuts. They actually wanted me to put on Europe's The Final Countdown and Final Record over this after listening to this. They wanted it to sound like Macklemore, but it didn't. So we had to put on something else. So yeah, I can't get rid of that, but it's cool. It's up here. What's that? I'll try it, but I think it might be one of those things where it only works in PCs. But I'll try it in this MacBook and see if it works. Maybe it'll show up in iTunes. If it does, then I'll just swap the cables. But I'll try to be mindful of turning the volume down before I swap them out, because I did that in the last thing and it made it sound. Oh, it is 2:10. So final all call for getting any freebies up here. And at the end, people are welcome to take what they want. And then whatever doesn't get taken is going in the free box in Olympia. Before I start, I live in Olympia, and I need a ride. If anyone's going back to Tacoma or Olympia area or know somebody, after this session, I'm going to try to get some rides. So if you know anybody and they see me, I'm going to start walking to the bus depot around 3:30. So just letting you know that I need a ride to Olympia, but 512 park and ride or even downtown Tacoma works for me because that's halfway there. So my name is Justin McCoyne. I'm a teacher librarian at Greenwood Elementary School on Fort Lewis. So this session that I made is kind of like a retrospective, stuff going back into the classrooms, even stuff like as far as the 60s. And most of the stuff is going to be technology that's more like the last 20 years, some of the stuff that's current, and then there's some trends of what's should be coming or could be coming. I'll let you know I'm not a psychic. I haven't been, I don't work at the psychic store like my friends do. And if something doesn't happen, it's all good. So I'm going to reference some videos during the presentation that are on the wiki. And the wiki page for this class, I put a lot of different links of videos that you can see going back in time. Like I have like a Air Force, how to take care of your 16mm projector video. I also have just videos that when I was in kindergarten, and I'll show a little bit of that here in a bit. And what I did was I downloaded some of the videos to show, like depending on if time allows, how much I can show, but I know that I'm limited and I gotta compact stuff, so I'll try to not talk too fast and go through it. So. If you have questions afterwards, feel free to talk with me. I'm videotaping it, so I'm going to try to put this on the wiki if it allows me to create a link and stuff like that. So here we go here. So I wanted to share my experience as a student going back to when I started school in 1982 in kindergarten, all the way up to now as a teacher. So there's a picture of me. That's when I was in 4th grade. And what happened was there was Nintendo Power. It was this magazine that I read a bunch. And if you got the top score, you had to take your picture and mail it in, and they would put it in the magazine for you. So I got a really good score, but we didn't have instant photography back then. So I used my Fisher Price camera, took a picture of it, sent it to Safeway to get it processed. A couple days went back, and I was so excited when I got that pack of film. I was like, yes, I am going to be in Nintendo Power. And the picture showed up like this. And I showed this to my kids in the library saying, you guys are so lucky that you don't have to wait for your film to come back. Or like you shoot a roll of Super 8 film and it comes back and it looks like garbage. So that instant gratification we have nowadays, we didn't have that back in the day. I mean, if we would have an iPhone back in 1986, it would have been, oh, it didn't come out. Let's turn the flash off. Oh, now you're in Nintendo Power. So unfortunately, I didn't have a DeLorean back then. I also have my ID when I started teaching in 2005. That's when I started full-time being the band director at Woodbrook Middle School. And I used a lot of technology when I was at Woodbrook. And I went over to the library in 2010, kind of switched hats. I still do band, but it's an after-school program right now that we do in the library. And here's my desktop computer. These were the discs that I couldn't bring because they're still technically purchased with public dollars, so I have to surplus them the legit way, which means I have to write it on the 101 form and send it into our purchasing department, etc. So I found that floppy disk and some of those other ones too, and like, it won't go in my computer. It doesn't even have a thing for any of those discs now. So here's a picture of my yearbook in 1983, and I looked through the entire yearbook. Didn't have any technology in there. We did have a computer lab at my school at American Lakes in Sacramento, California, and it was like these old Apple II computers. Really fun though. We would go in there, we would do our games, but we didn't have a mouse, and it was just it was fun. It was like the green screen looking devices. And when I went to 1st grade, I went to a school that had no technology. And then back in 2nd grade, we had a 16mm projector that the teacher let me operate, and that was really fun, just like helping the films rewind back, and it kind of got me excited about technology at a young age. So we used to go to the video arcades after school, and there were video arcades everywhere back there in the early 80s. You'd just show up, you could go there, there'd be adults, kids, and people would just be all into the games, and it was a really exciting time because a lot of people were using technology. Video games were really popular. There was this interactive stuff like Dragon Slayer, which, come to find out, was just like a big laser disc inside of a machine that would go through different sequences. So here's the first piece of technology that I used to play with when I was little. I got in a lot of trouble though, and that was the same TV from the picture in the Nintendo down the road. I broke the knob off, so I got in trouble, but then I got to keep the TV when I got to grade school. So, and it has like the antenna up on top. Love watching TV. I love playing with film too. And there's a picture of me with some batteries and some film, and I would just like notoriously go grab the Super 8 camera, shoot film on the ground, you know, all that good stuff. I would take my records and go out to the sun, and in Sacramento it gets really hot in the summertime, let them melt, start shading them, or take color crayons, let them melt on top of the records, and then put them in a bucket of water. I mean, there's so much fun stuff you can do with that technology. Or take the magnet from the CB radio to the TV. Yeah, my parents were really happy with me. So, we shot a lot of Super 8 film. And let's see if this works. This is me and my brother going to preschool. And yeah, so we were always around media stuff. And, there we are, back in front of a Toyota. So it doesn't change. But one of the things with when you transfer those Super 8 films, you get that cheesy music in the background. And my grandparents, when they sent off their Super 8 films in 1990 to Albertsons, they had like some deal. Bring in all your Super 8 films, we'll put it on VHS. And they had that music, but it was cranking so loud, you just have to turn the volume off or put other music on. And what we would do is like how we used to do it, where we just play the films and everyone would talk about it. So we just, turn the audio off, we'll just talk about the movie. So we got a VHS camcorder in 1983, and my dad went crazy with the video camera, in a good way. He was really excited because he shot a lot of Super 8 film. In 1982, for Christmas, he shot like one of my favorite Super 8 films of us at Christmas. And guess what he saw? Just the Christmas tree lights, because it was so dark in there. The only thing that was showing up was like the blinking Christmas lights. You can't see us opening the presents. I've gone into like Adobe Premiere and tried to like bring up the light in it, and it still looks like garbage. So it's, when we had the video camera, they were separate from the device. So what my dad would do is he had the backpack or the side strap VCR. That's what we used to watch our videotapes on the TV. And whenever we would shoot video, he would have to take that, detach it, hook the backpack straps up, connect it to that camera, and it was really like a Super 8 camera because you had all those adjustments. You could adjust for color. And I remember one time I'm like, I'm going to try to do this, and I couldn't even like pick up the VHS player, and my dad would not let me hold the camera because that was like, it looked like that was a little bit easier to break than the VHS player. And the funny story was my uncle got the VHS player in 1988, 5 years after we had it, because he painted my dad's car. And about 3 months after my uncle got the VHS player, my cousins, Danny and Andy, put a peanut butter and jelly sandwich inside of the VHS player. So it didn't really last that long, but the intent was good. So here's just and I have this on the wiki. It's just some of the video footage from 1983 in this is my kindergarten classroom. And you kind of see some of the technology. Not a whole lot. There's a record player over there, and you got the chalkboard. There's no interactive. Let's see here. A 10 key. There's like a 10 key in the middle of the room. And yeah, there's the teacher works. That was the AM kindergarten teacher. And I was in PM kindergarten. So it was cool because you can hear all the audio, the kids talking. The Super 8 films, you just don't get that stuff. So this is what kindergarten looked like back in 1983 from some videotape that my dad had laying around for a long time. So this looks a lot different than my daughter started kindergarten this year, and they have, there I am trying to get in the camera's business. So it's fun times. So these were the computers that we had in our lab in kindergarten, and it was so much fun to be able to play on them, and it was really cool stuff. And I remember you had to flip the disc over, and that stuff kindergartners could not do. So it was fun. And then in 2004, when I was doing my student teaching, we had one of these computers in the resource room, and there were kids still playing games on it. And I really have a heart for those kids that love the retro technology. Like they'll go onto a Commodore 64 and say, I like this, I want to try it out. Or those Commodores have those cassette drives. And I remember I got a Commodore for free. Someone over at Panorama City in Lacey was giving rid of a bunch of stuff. It was all in the box from Kmart. It still had like the Kmart receipt on it. And I liked it, and I had it set up for a little bit, but then I thought, you know what, the kids weren't really digging it as much as I did, so I traded it for an eMac. And I was going to give the eMac away today here at this, but since I know I might be taking the bus back to Olympia, I didn't want to carry the eMac back with me and nobody took it. So yeah, that's one that I'm not really using it no more because the newer iMacs are so much lighter. I mean, I use the MacBook Pros, so it's not really, it takes up too much space to have those big round eMacs. Now, so in second grade, I was talking a little bit about how I used to do the film, and that was like my incentive. The teacher had like, okay, Justin, if you're good, you'll be able to make sure that when the film's done, you stop the projector, and then you can put the film back up and let it rewind. And that was like the highlight of my year in second grade. So it got me hooked into doing film and video and just being more aware of it. And here's another picture of one of those older VHS players. It's all busted up here. And this is like one that my grandpa had kind of like in the mid-'80s, late 80s that he was using. Another thing that in 3rd and 4th grade, we were using the overhead projectors a lot. And I even got an overhead projector the other day from one of the other librarians because I surplused all the overheads in my building because I'm in charge of like the technology, I'm the site tech for my building too. So overheads were one of the first things to go out the door, and a lot of it was I just didn't have the bolts. You could find the bolts for it, and plus we have video projectors as the classroom sets, and that's what we've moved to. But I'm really fond of the overhead projector, and now I'm starting to use it again. And my daughter, she loves the overhead. She was like drawing on like these transparency papers, and she's like, Daddy, you gotta get one of these. And I'm like, okay, just don't step on it because they'll break really easily. And the Commodore 64 was the first system that I saw when I was in 3rd grade. I had a friend who was able to go online it was like text messaging basically back and forth. And it wasn't really, I don't know what you would call it, email, but he had a modem hooked up and he was able to talk to people on the East Coast. And he would type something and they would respond back and we'd just watch the screen. And then we'd go and play this game called BC. It was like this caveman, there was like a rock rolling down, you'd have to jump over it, and then we'd go back and, okay, let's see if somebody is going to talk to us from New Jersey, and then they were like, they wrote back, and I remember like going home thinking like, oh, that would be so cool, and we can talk through computers and back and forth, so I was like dreaming of that day back when I was playing with that. And then the Nintendo, it was so popular, like everybody was playing video games, and when the Nintendo came out, it really changed things up. Because the graphics were better, the games were longer. Eventually Nintendo started having educational games, but it wasn't when I started playing it. When it came out, it wasn't educational for me. I was just not doing schoolwork, my grades plummeted, so my parents took the Nintendo out of the house. And once I got my grades back up, they brought the Nintendo back, but I had restrictions on it. And that robot, I really wanted the robot, because in the commercial, the robot would pick things up, and I was like, I want to get that robot someday, and I never did get the robot, but I was always thinking about robots because it was on the big pack. One thing I did love was the typewriter. And typing, we didn't have like a class set of typewriters in elementary school, but we had an IBM one at my house. And this is where I would practice typing, writing stories, and I would make my own books. And then I would bring my work to school and give it to my teacher, like, oh, I typed it up. Feel really proud about it. Then I'd get assignments and come back home and type them. And I remember it'd be like 10 o'clock at night, and I'd just be on the typewriter typing, and I loved using the typewriter. And then when I still use the typewriter in college to make zines, because I didn't have a computer in college. I didn't think about buying one. They were so expensive in the late 90s that I just was like, okay, I'm still going to use a typewriter. So eventually we got one of those Smith Corona word processing typewriters that were like really silent, and you would type everything in, you spell check, and it would print out like one line, and then go to the next line you type. And I thought that was like the coolest thing. I was like, oh, well, we're living in the future now. But that only lasted for a little bit. And like the dot matrix printers, these were really cool. Like back when I was in middle school, we would make banners with these things like 4th graders or 5th graders, welcome to the middle school, or like dance party. And it would just be like all that perforated paper every like 11 inches, and you can hang the banners. And I was at O'Reilly's Auto Parts the other day, and I noticed like there's like this they're still using the dot matrix printer, but they tried to be like, oh, we're not really using it to tick off the circle ends on it, and they're like, oh, here's your receipt. I'm like, oh, that was a dot matrix printer. I almost asked if I could take a picture for the workshop. I could take a picture, but I felt like I would be disrespected, so I didn't. But I love those printers, and there were a ton of those in our district, and we surplused them in like, I think 2005. This is one gem that I have in my music portable, and it is a TV cart. And the TV carts were really cool. I remember in 6th grade, we had like one TV cart in our school. And it was a lot bigger than this. The TV was a lot, I think this one must have been from the 90s, but we still have them. We have 2 TV carts at our school. The middle school, they had like 25 of them, and at the end of the year, everyone brings in their TV carts in the library, and it just takes up like half the space. And I've been telling them, like, surplus those things. Because like, I surplused all the TVs in my building 2 years ago, and they were built into like this cabinetry that just didn't make sense. And nobody was using them anymore. I thought, if there's an earthquake, well, one, it's going to hurt the teacher because the cabinet was right behind the teacher desk. So all it would take was one earthquake to some big RCA TV from like 1985 landing on a teacher. I was like, I don't want that on my heart. So I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. So but I did keep a couple, and I have to make sure those straps are on there really good. Because I use this for my incentive parties. I'll bring my Nintendo 64 and hook it up to that when we have our reading parties. And the kids love it, and they love using the old TV. And the funny thing is like, they have the choice of like using the iPads, doing cool math for kids at the party, or playing Super Mario World on the TV. And there's a line going from Super Mario World to play it on the TV. So like the kids are really digging this stuff. And a lot of the reason why is their parents kept the old devices and the hardware, and they have them in the closet. The kids are like, what's that? Oh, I just take my Xbox RCA cables out and put these ones in? Okay. So, I mean, they like it and it's cool. And even the Xbox, they have like those retro games within the games. So when the kids find the cartridges, they get excited because they see like a physical media that they can like put in and take out. And I show the kids how to blow in the cartridge, and they love it. They're like, why are you blowing on that? And I'm like, it makes it work. And they're like, oh, and then they try to like, and I'm like, no, it's like a sustained blow. And then you do it a couple times and you got to smack the cartridge. So yeah, and they see me do it, they're like, this looks like Encino Man or something. So, or Hot Tub Time Machine, that's kind of like one like that. And a downside of using 16mm film in the classroom is if it breaks, you're screwed unless you know how to splice. And I know that they didn't have these in schools, but this was like what they had in my college. I went to Evergreen and did filmmaking there. And that thing on top of the Steinbeck flatbed editing thing, the splicer, you needed to know how to use that splicer to splice your film back together. And if the teacher before you wasn't good at splicing the film back, right when it got to that splice, the film snaps. And so then it's going, and the kids are like, yay! Because they just see like the teacher panicking because like, does the teacher have the skill to splice it? Do they have a splicer? Do they have another activity plan? What's going to happen? And so the kids are just like, you know, trying to see like, what's the teacher going to do? And it was cool when I finally learned how to splice film. But my second grade teacher did it, showed me how to use the splicer. And it's like a guillotine thing. A kid could cut their finger off maybe with it. I mean, if it was sharp enough. But yeah, you had to watch out for the splices. And 16mm film. This is what I studied before I got out of college. And one of the things with film is that it's really expensive, and you have to just like send your film to the lab, get it back in a week. And those like Ford motion pictures here in Seattle and Alpha Cine when I was in college, and we would shoot our film, send it, wait a week, and then everybody started doing digital video. And they're like, do digital video. The only thing is, if you want to render a 3-minute video to export it, you have to do it overnight. So what we do is we would go in our Evergreen had these media studios, and I would go there like 10 o'clock at night, and I would edit my video in Premiere on these like G3 towers, and then we would hit like render. And then we would come back the next morning and see if it actually did it. And half the time it would crash. And the other half the time it would work. And so it was just one of those things where you had to just be at the mercy of the technology. Because those computers, I think that they had like a 20-gigabyte hard drive. You were like, yes, okay, I'm going to be able to do some serious video editing. But it just took so long. The processing time was forever. And so I thought, you know what, film looks good. People are going to be shooting film. And this is like a viable career to go into. And luckily I started substitute teaching right after I graduated. I was looking at either Cal Arts or just doing public access and try subbing it. And I went with subbing it. So that's kind of what happened there with me. So now at our school we had a program called Odyssey of the Mind. And the kids built robots in Odyssey of the Mind. And this robot came out around the time when the kids were doing that. And I was really jealous of the kids that got to build the robots. Because people were robot crazy in the 80s. And they thought like, there's going to be robots. It's going to be like the Jetsons. They even had like a Jetsons comeback in the 80s where they made new Jetsons episodes because people were just like, oh, the future's coming. Back to the Future was really popular. So, and then when Back to the Future 2 came out, people were really thinking, oh, okay, there's going to be flying cars. All this stuff's going to, like, there's going to be retro 80s bars. Or now they call them like barcades, I think. But I don't know if that video game arcade. Oh yeah, I was thinking about how Kristen Glover was in that movie. That's a whole other tangent there. But yeah, and next year is 2015, the year that Back to the Future predicted, and yeah, there's not flying cars yet. So, but I was obsessed with like the future back when I was in elementary school. I was also obsessed with Radio Shack. And these projects here, the 161 science projects, it was like a really cool way to, I wouldn't call it coding, but it was a way you could program things to make stuff happen. And this was something that in our school, kids would use these for science fair projects, and it was really fun, and it was like a technology that I kind of want to find them and bring them back and show my kids. Also, Oregon Trail was really fun, and here's a popular, Nicole, and I spent so much time on Oregon Trail, and this is what got me typing so fast, was if you got done with your typing exercises in my 7th grade keyboarding class, you got to play Oregon Trail. So I was like, okay, I'm going to practice at home because I had a typewriter at home, so I had that advantage of practicing with a real typewriter that was harder to press down on the keys. And yeah, I was obsessed with Oregon Trail. I was naughty too. I would put bad names in, so on the tombstone it would say like bad, you know, something inappropriate, died or something. But the kids love Oregon Trail. I have it on the iPads now, and the kids will go in there and they'll just go straight into it. And I played a screencast of someone playing Oregon Trail for my 5th graders. And they went nuts watching it. And especially the music, when it's like, it'll play like that audio that's just so distinct. So I'm glad that Oregon Trail is still around, and it's just something that was really fun. Card catalogs. Now, this is how I got started in library. When I was in middle school, the librarian, I used to go to the library a lot in middle school, and he asked me if I wanted to help him out with inventory over the summer, and he paid me $3 an hour. I was like, sure, I'll do that. You know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks would go by, and we would get an area of the nonfiction section out of the card. We'd pull the card catalog out. We'd go to the area. He'd pull the book out. I'd have the card. He'd get the book. He'd look at it, assess it, decide whether it stayed or not. And we'd find out if books were missing. And it was just all card-based system. And it took like 2 to 3 weeks. But I learned a lot about the collection and collection development. And when I got to the elementary school in 2010, we still had a card catalog, even though we were using Horizon for our library database. But the former librarian was keeping art supplies in there. And it was pretty cool. And I was like, oh, here's all the rubber bands, here's all the Post-it notes. But what happened was the legs were getting wobbly, and I had like a second grader mess with it and it almost fell over. And then one of the legs snapped. And I was like, oh, and they're heavy, and I did not want that to fall on a kid. So I went and I had to throw it away because it was cool, but I wasn't going to put the time in to try to repair it because it was a damaged asset and we weren't using it. So now I just have plastic bins instead of the card catalog keeping the stuff. I spent a lot of time at the library, and a lot of time using these microfiche machines and searching for magazines and newspaper articles from a long time ago. And that's how I would find information, was I would go find the microfiche from like, oh, Popular Mechanics, 1974, it has this article, and then you would just go and move the fish thing around or the film until you found what you were looking for. And the library was great because they had computers in the early 90s where I could reserve cassette tapes and videotapes and books, and they would send them to me. Or they would send them to the library, so I'd ride my bike over there, get on the computer, reserve stuff, and then come back a couple days later and there would be tapes, and I'd make mixtapes of the stuff I wanted to listen to. So the public library was really influential in like the technology they had there. That was the technology I used, because at home I didn't have a computer, I didn't have that access, I had to use the public library. And so I push kids to the public library nowadays, because I still have kids that don't have computer access and they want to take AR tests, they want to do Ticket to Read, they want to do 10 marks, they want to do their online programs. So I had to say, here's where the library is, that's 4 blocks down the street. I even have like a Google map on our website that shows them directions how to get there, and try to work with the library to get them to know that, hey, these kids are coming in, they need to use your guys' workstations, and they're like, bring them in, have the kids come. And so it's been a real positive relationship with the library on Fort Lewis, the Grand Staff Library, and they've been letting the kids use the tech there. Now, I remember in '92, CD-ROM was hot, and everybody was all about CD-ROM. And I have this one Ron Clark CD-ROM here that I played for my students the other day, and it looks like iTunes recognized it. So let's hear what it sounds like here. This one is President's Day rap. Yeah, that's good. So yeah, the CD-ROM, it has like enhanced stuff in there, and I think it even has him doing some lesson plans in there that are in the CD-ROM. And where's he? I want to hear him rap. So yeah, this is the CD-ROM that I found recently, and so it's been it's a real gem. And like if I ever want to wake the kids up, this is what I'm using. It used to be a Billy Ray Cyrus VHS tape. I used it as like if the kids were bad, they had to watch Billy Ray Cyrus and then write positive stuff about the performance. And so it was just one of the things that I had as like a teaching tool. That it's like, oh, okay, you guys have to watch Billy Ray Cyrus and not laugh. And it was very hard. Even myself, I had like. But CD-ROM, I remember in 10th grade, they were like, oh yeah, you can get the whole encyclopedia on one CD. And I thought, that is the coolest thing ever. And like the history teacher said, who has a CD-ROM? And 1 hand out of 30 went up. And this was at Clover Park High School. And he's like, well, soon you guys will all have CD-ROM players. So I'm like, yeah, okay. And for me, that wasn't until 2003 when I got my first computers. And it wasn't a CD-ROM, it was just a regular CD player. And in high school, I didn't have technology classes. This picture here is a little bit after I got out of high school, but we had a lab that we used for, I know why I turned the thing down here. Okay, that's here. So yeah, we had the big computers, but I didn't really get to use them in my high school. I was more just still shooting VHS. That was what I was into, and computer technology was kind of like, wasn't something that my family was valuing. Now, Alpha Smarts, these things were huge back in the day. And our consulting teacher told me the story of like when the rep came back in the day. And what they did was they held up the Alpha Smart right about here and dropped it. And then it's like, they're so durable. And like then they got it and showed people it still works. And so the Alpha Smart was just like this way that you could get technology for typing for kids at an affordable rate instead of buying a laptop. So think about buying a laptop in 1995, what it could do, how much it cost, and if you're really just teaching typing and word processing, the Alpha Smart was the smarter option. Now, eventually the Alpha Smarts, like the 3000s, they have like this beam device, which if you want one up here, if I have one up here, they're free. You can take whatever you want. I have 2 of them. I even have one for the Neos. And the Neos, when I left the middle school, they spent I think like $40,000 on a bunch of Neos. Yeah. And it was multiple classroom sets. They were really excited about them, but they were using them for just like typing stuff. And there's a lot more stuff you can do with the Neos, like you can do math facts on flash on the newer devices. You can do AR tests, and it's really cool. Like the kids like, oh, if they want to do AR tests, you don't have a whole lab for them to do AR testing. They can still use these devices. And my kids love checking them out. What I did was I put like a barcode on the back of them, and I charged them. I found 3 carts of Alpha Smarts in our surplus portable, and they hadn't been used in like 6 or 7 years. And so the elementary school I went to was the feeder school to the middle school I worked at. So when I powered them up and started checking out the stories, they were written by the kids that I had just seen at the middle school when they were in 4th and 5th grade. So that told me the age of when the last time they were turned on. So it was like 6 or 7 years that those things had been sitting, and this was like a training storage type container. So they were going through all the elements of the weather. And only half of them survived. And the other, I had the surplus ones that didn't work, and the other ones that worked, they're still working. And so the kids will check them out, put them in their backpacks, type on them, and then I check out the USB ports with them too, so they can hook them up to the computer and export the text to Microsoft Word. So even though like this technology is getting surplus, it's a really cool way to get kids into typing. And like these kids that are on IEPs, if you don't have a lot of computing devices and you just need them to do typing for meeting an IEP goal, the Alpha Smarts, I have several students that are on IEPs that have these devices being used in their classrooms, and all the kids see them and they're like, I want one too, so they come to the library and they're like, can I check out an Alpha Smart? And I'm like, okay, sure. And so it's cool that the kids love using these and they're still somewhat popular in my library. Another thing that back in the day was Netscape Navigator. And this was like how you would surf the internet. And you would get like those installation disks that come inside there, and then you would load it. It's like, oh, it's loading. You're gonna get Netscape Navigator and go on the internet, and then you can go make a sandwich and come back, and AOL will load up. I mean, it was archaic. And when I went to Evergreen, everybody started getting email accounts. This was like 97, 98. And I was out in Ireland studying for a little bit, and they had one computer in the town that had internet at the school we were at. So people were like, why don't we? It was really expensive to make phone calls from Ireland to the United States. And I think like I could buy a beer, or I could talk to somebody for 20 seconds. And I usually picked the other option of going to the pub. So it was something where I said, you know what, it's going to be cheap for me to contact my friends. And so I had like 3 friends and family that had an email. So I would type it up like to the people that they would tell my other friends, like tell this person that, tell this person that. So like one messenger who had an email account back in the United States would tell multiple people the messages I was trying to send. So it was just such a different way of working before everyone had an email. Now everybody has an email. It's insane. And these were there were some of these old like reel-to-reel computing devices in the basement at Evergreen. I used to work for media services there, do a work study program. So I would go down into the basement. I'd have to move stuff into the cages that was going to go to the state warehouse surplus. And I was like, they had computers on reel-to-reel tape? What's with that? And there was like all these piles of reels in these cages, and I just was like, what is this? And I would look through the technology, and then I would talk to Ken, my boss, and he would say like, oh yeah, we bought that in the 70s, or oh, we used to use that to communicate with this school. And it was really cool, like the stuff that they had. And one of my favorite things to use was 3/4-inch videotape. I don't know if anyone's ever used that, but it's like a bigger VHS tape, and you can do the linear editing where you have your 2 or 3 VHS 3/4 machines and your faster one, and you put in like where you want it to start and stop, and oh gosh, it was a process. And I used to shoot sync film, and they had a lot of these devices that were these reel-to-reel audio recorders. And what Evergreen told me, like why they didn't work so well, because this was like 99, 2000, I was checking them out. They said people would take them on Grateful Dead tour and set them up and bootleg the shows, and they had gotten tons of hours on them. So by the 90s, they started getting all these like digital audio tape recording devices that worked in sync sound. So it was like, okay, why would anyone want to check this out in a million years? And the heads are going bad, they're not going to replace them. And I come along, I'm like, I want to check this out, it looks so cool. I saw someone using it. So I used it a couple times, and it was just so burdensome to like set up the 16mm CP16 camera, this device, have someone slave it. You needed so many people just to do a production. And then you had to send it off to the lab. You had to take this audio, 1/4-inch tape, transfer it to what would be 1/2-inch tape, but it was really 16mm audio tape that would run in those flatbed things like I showed a little earlier, that flatbed editing suite. So yeah, it was just so much stuff, but now it's all on a software program that you can edit. And what got me into education was Super 8 and teaching a Super 8 workshop. So in 2000, I wrote a grant to teach people how to do Super 8 processing of film, and it was really exciting. We shot black and white Super 8 film, we processed it using the darkroom at Evergreen, and it showed up, it came out a little bit like this, and everybody that took the workshop was so excited that I was like, you know what, I like this, I'm going to try substitute teaching, and then it took off. I don't know if it's going to work here. But this video, Super 8 video that I shot, if it wants to be a friend to me, which it doesn't, I'll put a link to it on the wiki. The cool thing about it was Josh Blue, the guy who won Last Comic Standing, he was in the junkie house there because he was a student at the time. And he's in the film. So it's all grainy, it kind of goes in and out, and it looks really experimental. So what I did was I started doing like television production, and was using like these old studio stuff. And at the middle school, they had a video editing, or like a video production class at Black Hills High School. And it was cool because the kids got to go and they edit video, and I was like, wow, this is some pretty nice facilities. And I didn't realize that people were teaching more technology in the schools until I started substituting and going to different tech classes. So I got to see a lot of different classroom setups because I went to every school in the Tumwater School District, and I subbed all like K-12 and got a little taste of what was out there. And one of the things I noticed the most was that every classroom had a television set. So this is like 2001, and this was just common. And I still have one of these in my library hooked up. And so it was just like TV hooked up to cable. And one of the things when September 11th happened, I was substitute teacher, and they put a memo out that no one could turn on the TV. And it was a big deal. And the substitutes didn't get that memo. So the teacher left in the subplans like, please play this videotape. And I didn't know they had cable and all that stuff. And I go to turn the TV on, and there's just like footage of like, September 11th. And then they're like, you can't. I was like, I didn't know that they had cable. And so then I was scared of touching the TVs after that. I was like, I want to use a TV card that I know is not hooked up to cable. So now I'm aware that the school has cable or doesn't have cable. And yeah, I already talked a little bit about the high school editing stuff, but video editing is a really great tool to get kids hooked into using technology. And I thought it was a really positive experience to see those kids get into production, because then they could go to other colleges that had the film stuff, and it's just a way to get them hooked into learning. Now, another thing that we used in the schools was 4-track recorders, and this was what we had to do for multi-tracking. So now we would use GarageBand. Back then, they would record 1 track or 2 tracks at a time, and then they would do a mix down of it. And the kids loved using the 4-track recorders. And I would bring them when I subbed, and the kids would make their own songs, and it was good times. Now, one of the things that got me into computers, because I didn't take computer classes, I didn't start learning computer technology until I started student teaching at University of Washington, Tacoma. I used to go to Portland, close by the pound of Ben's, and there were computers there. And I found stuff like this was all in a bin, and I found a computer, and I was able to get, Windows 2000 and like the Windows Office suite from UW Tacoma for $10 as a teacher, and it worked on the computer. I was like, yes, I have a computer. And then there was no charge internet back then. It was like 5.5 something, and you would hook it up with your telephone line, and you could get free internet. So then I was like, now I can go online and do my coursework, because we had like Blackboard and stuff, and it was really cool to be able to use Microsoft Front Page. And I don't even know if they have Microsoft Front Page anymore. It's been a while, but that was how I learned how to make websites, was using Microsoft Front Page. And I started teaching Fruity Loops as a software program to students. around 2004, 2005, and it's just been a blessing. Like, I still use it with my kids, and it's a way for them to make beats, they can hear the beat, and they can like see the grid and the sequence of where it's at. And yeah, I'm a big fan of Fruity Loop Studio, and I even think they have like an iPad app nowadays. And I used this when I was student teaching as an incentive. And here's a picture of my classroom in 2004, student teaching. So I got my overhead projector right there, got my little mini computer lab back there with those older Macintoshes. And over on the right-hand side, I had my PC workstation with Fruity Loops. And so if the kids got their work done, they could go onto that computer and make beats using Fruity Loops. And over on the left-hand side, those computers were used for AR back when you had to put the disk in to load it for AR. And we're an AR school now, and I love having it all electronic, because now like, kids can look up their quizzes, find the quiz numbers, and they can get tons of books instead of like, we only purchased X amount of quizzes on these disks. So yeah.
On the shelf.
On the shelf?
Way in the back.
Way in the back?
Yeah.
It's a reflection.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think it's not a TV, but it might be like some sort of, I don't know what it is. But yeah, it's something that didn't come out too well in the picture. But I know it's nothing high tech, because the highest tech stuff is right there, and the overhead right there. And I used to come home from student teaching with a piece of beef smeared on the side of my hands, my shirts, all I had like that stain right here. And I just didn't know, like, am I going to be using this overhead? All my clothes are going to be permanently stained. There's another picture there of the computers over there in the corner. Yeah, I still can't make out what that is.
The chalkboard?
It might be a chalkboard. The school's not there anymore. This is Geiger Elementary in Tacoma. I think they built a new one, so it probably looks a lot different now. Another thing that I did with kids was Game Maker 2D. And this is a program, I think it's Game Maker 3D now, but we used to make like these cartoons. And then we'd also make like these games where they would take like old school Atari games and change the sprites of the characters. So they'd have like a banana as Pac-Man or something like that. And it was cool because they got to mess with like the graphics and stuff and create these new characters. And the kids loved it. And so I was really excited to be able to do gaming with the kids. And this is like a little assortment of all the different Apple computers, going back to that old laptop. If you ever watched 90210, they have one of these laptops, 90210, and that's like the big deal that they got that. And these were the computers that when I came to middle school in 2005, there was a pile of them in the back of my classroom. And we also had a technology program that went under the year before I got there, so there was a portable full of just gear, and that's how we like Frankenstein some workstations in the band room to be able to do computers. So this is what my classroom looked like at the beginning of 2006 here at the middle school. And here's my overhead projectors before I got the document camera, and I have students shooting video right here. They're making a film, and back here in this room was our video editing studio. So we had like a mini Mac back there that they would hook up the video camera and do their editing with. So what happened was I was teaching my 7th grade band class, and I had to jiggle the overhead projector to get it to work right. I went, smacked it and smacked the glass in front of all the kids, and they just lost it. They were like, whoa, you broke the overhead. And I just felt so bad. And I went to the librarian, and I'm like, oh, sorry, Polly, I broke your overhead. Am I in trouble? And then I was a first-year teacher. And she's like, no, it's okay, I'll fix it. And then our director of instructional technology at the time, he told me about a grant that they had in the district, so they could get like a video projector and a document camera. I said, oh, fill me in. So I like next day filled out the grant, sent it in, and started telling other people, just use the stuff I wrote in my grant, you fill it in too. So other people started doing that, and they got these classroom sets of video projectors and document cameras. And it took us like 4 years to get the whole school from like 06 to 2010 to have all the classroom sets set up like that. But we went along and made it happen. And when I got to the elementary school in 2010, we had about a third of our class who didn't have the document camera or video projector set. They were still using the overheads. And so we had to go and get some building money to be able to buy those devices. And then it took me a year to surplus the overheads. People didn't want to get rid of them. They started hiding them from me. They're like, oh, Justin's coming, so we got to hide stuff that he's going to surplus. And so I was like, okay. And then the principal would be like, okay, I know where they hid it. Let's go get it. And then I'd have to talk with them like, you know what, look how nice this video projector and document camera are. Students can put their work over there. You don't have to make a photocopy in a photocopy machine with the transparency paper running through and have it get jammed up and be that person who messed up the copy machine. So, I mean, there's just a lot of flexibility with the document camera setup. And I just love being able to project onto my whiteboard, because I have a video teach hooked up, and it works out great for me because like the kids can write over it. And Another thing was the Super 8 film. When I shot Super 8 film with kids in 2006, the only place I would process Super 8 film in the state was Walmart in Abilene. So I had to go all the way out to, and they were sending it to Dwayne's Photo in Kansas, which no longer processes Kodachrome film. And it was $4 though. It was so cheap. I don't know what Walmart, like why they were still processing it, but the one Walmart in Abilene was still doing it. So that's, and I showed the 8th graders made a film with it, and we watched it in the band room, and they hated it. They were like, it's so dark. There's no sound. You can't hear anything. They were just complaining. And I was like, okay, guys, we're not doing film anymore because it took so long. They're like, can we just use video? And I said, sure. So, and the surplus list, they should not have told me about the surplus list. Because I love the surplus list. That's like one of my favorite things to find all year. And otherwise, it's going to go on pallets to Kent and get surplused off and go someplace else. So that's how I got a lot. I became a big fan of like old technology, and I started finding like VHS-C camcorders on the surplus list, and that Dazzle thing. I used to use that a lot back in like 06, 07, because we would shoot the stuff on the VHS-C cameras that were surplus, and then we would hook up the RCA connectors to encode it into digital video. So I was still using the old technology, but I would have to do that conversion from analog to digital in order for us to use those devices. But I mean, I had like 8 video cameras, and yeah, they weren't digital, but still, the kids were able to shoot video, and if they broke the camera, it was going to go to the warehouse anyway. So the smart board started coming around, and it was, some schools, if you had a new construction, you got a smart board, and our district had a lot of these smart boards come in, but it was, with constructions being so old, the wiring to get them hooked up sometimes would cost more than the devices. And I got a Brightlink table mount projector, and I was going to do it ceiling mounted, but the maintenance and utilities people came over and they're like, do not bring your tools, do not attempt to set it up. And because they have a different union than us, and they're not allowed to do that. So I was like, okay, I won't do it, but can I get a quote? And the quote was like $2,200 just to do the wiring and put it in. And the device was like $1,600. So I said, okay, I'm going to use it just as a table mount until we get, because I knew we were getting a new construction. So I have it set up on a table in the library, and the kids love using it, and it's really cool. But the smart board, I just didn't get a chance to use them a whole lot. But I work with the Mimeo as the interactive for me because I like using my whiteboard, and you can't write on the smart boards with your expo pens. That's kind of one of the downsides to them. But it's cool that kids can use their fingers, which is nice too. So, and also the transponders or like the voting systems, the kids are using those a lot more, and it's really helpful for kids to get like instant gratification and know what they voted on. And they can, I think you can even do those with the Neo2s as well. So another thing is with internet speeds increasing, around 2007, I started a YouTube channel for our school. And this channel right here, it has like almost, I think, 500,000 views now since we started it in 07. And this is where I would put all the concert footage, so the parents that were overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan could watch the videos of their kids that were performing, because we had a lot of deployed parents. And I also have a screencast down there, or not screencast, just like instructional videos of me playing out certain songs on the guitar. And it was a way for kids to be able to practice at home and flip my classroom a little bit, so I could put that content on there. It's like, okay, watch the videos, and then when you come to class, I will help you out and walk you through, and we can do it together and work out the problems that we're having with the piece. Now, another thing that I found out about in 2009 was karaoke was on YouTube. And you can do free karaoke, and I buy a karaoke machine. And my karaoke machine was about to kick the bucket. We were going to go bury it behind the school, and my kids were excited about it. And then this girl comes up to me, she's like, haven't you tried to go on YouTube to get karaoke? And I'm like, really? And so we typed in a Justin Bieber song. It was like, this is where Justin Bieber got really bad, or naughty, I should say. And it was there, and the kids were like, yay! And all the discs that I had for my karaoke machine were skipping. So I was like, okay guys, we're throwing out the karaoke machine, and we just went to YouTube karaoke. And I still do it with the kids, and they love it. They just put the mic up, go to YouTube, preview it, make sure it's clean, and then we'll do the karaoke. And one of my favorite stories of just the technology stuff was when Obama was, in his inauguration speech, we wanted to broadcast it for the school. But we didn't have Wi-Fi in our district yet. So what we did was we were like, okay, let's see if we can get an Ethernet cord long enough to go into the gym from the band room. And we didn't have one that was long enough. And we didn't have laptops, and we wouldn't be able to use the Wi-Fi anyway. So what I had to do was I had to go onto my teacher workstation, go to YouTube, load the inauguration video, and then hook up that same mini DV camera that's back there, and I videotaped the screen of it. And then went and brought the video camera into the gym and hooked it up directly to the projecting unit, and we watched it. That's how we did it. So it was like, we couldn't, there was no wireless. That was what we had to do to make it happen. And I even went over to Tillicum Elementary because I heard they had cable and that they were watching the inauguration, but they didn't have a VHS player hooked up to the cable. So I was like, can I go back to my school and get a VHS player and hook it up? And then we realized like the amount of time it would have took me to get the VHS and hook it up to it, hook the coaxial cables, it wouldn't have happened. So that's what we had to do in order to show it. But it was really cool. It was really meaningful. It was like really an awesome experience. But we made it happen using the technology we had in 2009. Headset mics. Oh gosh, I love these things. Our PT teacher has one right now. It's really great to be able to use these things because the kids can hear you clearer, and it's nice because now we have like audio systems that kids that are having issues with hearing, they can hear with more amplification.
What's the name of that brand?
I think that might, no, this is like an Xbox one, I think. But I use a Shure one, and it's like $300, and I got it at the music store, and it's great. You can even like hook up a switch to have your iPod onto it. Now, cell phones, in 2010 when I left middle school, cell phones were exploding. And I was like the cell phone cop. I was like, give me your cell phone and put it away. Don't do it. And this was just what we were having was kids were taking pictures of kids in the bathroom with their cell phones, or they were texting kids like the questions and stuff to like what they were taking on the test. So and it was just, and I struggled like, how are we going to use cell phones in our schools? And so it was just one of the things that we wanted to have personal devices, but we didn't have a solution. And then once we got wireless, it kind of changed things up. So right now we're like looking at how we're going to have BYOD solutions. And here's what I have right now. Here's a kid in my classroom. See, I have that Alpha Smart card right there. That was one of the ones I got out of that portable. And we also use it as an iPad card too. So what I do is I have like these power sources back there, and I plug in iPads. So it has MacBook Pros, iPads, and Alpha Smarts in there. And then the Vimeo Teach makes that whiteboard interactive. And as you can see, I didn't erase any of the writing on there for a kid when to use Tick to read there. But Vimeo teaches, and you get it with Scholastic dollars too. I think it's like $1,200 Scholastic dollars for one of those things. But it was a more affordable solution. Now, in 2010, the Department of Defense gave our school a lot of money to do math testing, which came with 60 laptops. As long as the kids could take the math test 3 times a year and the stuff worked, I could do whatever I wanted with them. So I set up a lab using like old desks and have the laptops wired, but like the power cords are running underneath there, and I still have those poles. That pole cost 10 grand to put in that library to hook up those the Ethernet connections to put the drop in. So since we're now wireless and I have access points and I can't get rid of that bar anymore, I kind of have to work around it when I set up my classroom setup. So it's nice because now we have a computer lab in the library. And then here's some kids now that they're doing book reports where they're using the iPads to record. And this is my first grade reading group last year, just using the iPads in the library. Bookflix is another thing that kind of got made me surplus my VHS tapes, because all the Westonwood videos that have like Chicka Chicka Boom Boom, all the stuff that had like 3 books on one video, they're all on Bookflix now. So I bought it with my Scholastic dollars, and the kids started using it all the time. It works on the iPads, and it is amazing. And so since nobody was checking out the videos anymore, and they were all watching them on Bookflix, I surplus 280 videos, and those videos are all online. This is kind of Netflix for, I call it Netflix for books. That's kind of what I tell the parents. And there's a little cafe area I have in the library where the kids can kind of just come down and use the iPads. And I really wish that we could support Apple stuff, because I would have Apple TV in my classroom. But Apple TV can really use some awesome stuff too for sending content if your school allows those devices to be utilized. Now, getting rid of all the VHS tapes, it broke my heart, but it gave me a lot more shelf space. And here's just like a picture of a couple of videotapes that we would do with. The VHS-C, those, I got so many of those tapes just laying around in tubs in my house of like old drama performances and stuff. And I also got rid of the books on tape. I had a Lord of the Rings book on tape. It had 13 tapes in it. And the kid checked it out and brought it home. And the parents, they were like, you can't check out the tape player anymore, because it was just like they didn't want to be in charge of managing all those 13 cassettes of Lords of the Rings getting back into the case. So after, the kids were excited, but the parents weren't. They did not like them checking out the cassette decks and the cassette tape books on tape. So I had to show them how to use Overdrive instead, which is a nice solution. And in the past 4 years with our new constructions, we have a lot of interactive technology, and some of the stuff that we want to get is more connected stuff in there, so you can do like 3D technology in the classrooms. And as they develop more 3D stuff with Xbox Connect, we'll be able to have those options here in the near future. So I'm really excited about 3D technology and 3D printers. At our middle schools and high schools, we have our computer robotics classes printing out robotics parts that the kids are just doing a great job using. And Also, Skyping in classrooms. This is something that our new constructions we have is like the abilities to be able to Skype back and forth and just have permanent classroom setups that are really easy and intuitive to use. So you can see another classroom and be able to interact. And yesterday, someone was showing Office 365 and that link interface in there where you can be able to collaborate with students and use SkyDrive to share documents. So there's like a lot of cool stuff that's like coming out here that I'm really excited about. And just like students being able to use interactive stuff, but it's all like 2D touch, and like even iPads, you're touching on a 2D device. And so if you think about the third dimension and how we're going to use that in the future, it's really going to open up a lot of possibilities with students in design and being able to make cool things happen. Now, classrooms that haven't been modernized, there's classrooms all over the world that do not have technology. But that doesn't mean you can't teach. I mean, you can do amazing stuff without technology. And I kind of think like one thing that could happen in the near future is people would get inundated with so much technology that there may be like an anti-technology backlash where they might want schools that have no technology. Because you think we're adding more and more technology into our classrooms, and we have like the Wi-Fi signals, personal devices. The kids are just getting a lot of screen time. And parents might decide, you know what, I don't want these kids on that much screen time at school as well as at home. So there could be classrooms that go backwards and actually go back to classroom setups and focus on the instruction, but use the technology sparingly. But that's not the case that I'm seeing. It seems like more people are using the technology. Here's a picture of the Connect device. And we actually hook one of these up to our TV cards for the kids to do like physical activity stuff. And it's really cool if you want to have like an incentive, that TV card used as an incentive card to hook the Connect up so they can practice using the 3D interactive technology. And another thing that's really popular right now with my kids is the Lego thing. And here's a picture of them using the Lego robots and programming. They love this. And that NEX2 stuff, they're moving to EV3. And people are going to eventually, as they move over to EV3, the NEX2 stuff is going to be really cheap. So there's a lot of technology we have right now in our schools. If you think like 5 or 10 years from now, what are we going to do with that? What are we going to do with all the iPad first generations down the road? What are we going to do with all this robotic stuff? This stuff works right now, and kids can be using it. So we shouldn't just throw this stuff out and think like all these kids are going to be able to utilize this stuff for years to come. So, and then like, are we even going to be typing in the next 10 years? Like we could be moving to more like enunciation software programs where kids are going to be using their voice to talk back and forth. And typing might be something that we might not even be using as much. And if you think about like the iPads, like the kids are using all this the touch stuff. My second graders doing type 24, oh gosh, they struggle using a keyboard, but it's good. They're just starting to build the skill, and they need that skill, especially if we're doing an SBAC. But like, we're going to be seeing more of those headset mic things hooked up, and people having to talk clearly will be as much value of being able to type accurately. So, I mean, it's just one of those things where computing devices are going to be a little bit more intuitive. You need to know what your voice sounds like. And I always had this dream of like, there'll be like a phrase in the future that someone will say that programs your voice to say your voice back on how it reads the website. So let's say you wanted to read a Huffington Post article to you using your voice. You would say this one thing and it would program it, and then it would know your voice, and just based off all these sounds you make. So e-textbooks are another thing that we've been using a lot, and our school is trying to move us more into it. This is a screenshot from Journey's Think Central from 5th grade curriculum, and the kids can go in there, they can type in notes, save it, they can highlight, and it's awesome, especially when they're doing their quizzes in Think Central. I went all digital 2 years ago with my 4th grade reading group, and gosh, they did really well using this stuff. And like for their instant response questions, they would type up the stuff inside their account on the books, and then they would copy and paste it into, because they were allowed to use their books, but they use their e-book in order to get reference their information from the text. So yeah, I was really a big fan of using those e-books. Now here's a really cool picture. Here's the Newton versus the iPod Touch. So like Apple had a tablet back in the 90s. It just looked a little bit like this. And, so with all these personal devices in the classroom, there's lots of opportunities for you to get old devices. Not the Newton per se, but you can get like these phones right here for people for free, non-stop, like the LG phones or like old smartphones. And you can use the MIT app creator to make apps for these devices. If you were to go on Craigslist or put something in your district newsletter saying, hey, I need free cell phones, old smartphones, I need some S2s, I need some LGs, people will give them to you, and then you can use these with your kids to do MIT app creator. So, I mean, there's lots of ways we can utilize stuff that we have. And then just like using more of like the Skype and Tango and the FaceTime And connecting with classes all around the world, it just gives us opportunities to go global with our classroom. So it's just not there, we're everywhere. And another thing that we've been using a lot is web-based software. And this is where we have, like, our kids, like, to flip our classrooms, they've been using Ticket to Read, where it gives them, like, so this is more of like the fluency area, where they go in and they buy stuff after they've earned tickets from reading. And it really gets the kids hooked on learning, and it does the same, kind of the same script, it feels like, that's in the Read Well curriculum. So it's really cool, and it supports Read Well. And here's a screenshot of TJ Ticket inside the software program, and kids, it's like, now it's time to whisper read, and it checks their fluency. If they read too fast, it makes them read it over again. And it's a cool way to, the teacher can see like what they're getting right, what they need help on. It's really awesome. Another thing is the screenshot for the iPad. I love this for kids making their own screencasts. Kids love making their instructional videos, helping other kids out. I'll have like my 4th and 5th graders make math videos for the little kids, and then they can go and watch them on the iPads. And it's like a good way for them to be able to get teaching themselves. And another thing that I see, like in the next couple of years, we're gonna have a lot of like wearable technology. So if you think of like Google Glass, it might happen, but it might be some other stuff that we're wearing that the internet is embedded into our clothing, into our daily lives, and it just like communicates more intuitively. So cell phones are gonna be a lot faster, but we might not even have cell phones in 10 years. You never know. Like things change so much. Like I remember the Blackberries, like people thought Blackberry was gonna be hit, and like everybody was gonna use those keypads. And I remember when I finally got a Blackberry, I'm like, the tips of my thumbs hurt really bad. I don't know what's up with this. And then I got like the LG, and I'm like, whoa, that pain at the tip of my thumbs went away. And it's like, what's going to be different from the next device that we're going to communicate with? So, and I just think like we're really inundated with technology. And you just think like this gaming conference from 10 years ago, it's like everyone's bringing their computers, they have these big monitors, they've got these keywords they're typing on. 10 years from now, it might not even be a monitor. It might not even be a keyboard. It could be something totally different. But it's like really what we need to have is like a balanced approach to technology. So if you think about like what the kids, they're going to go home, they're going to be on their workstations. And then when you're in the classroom, you have them, you can have them on technology all the time, but they're just going through it. Did you have a question?
No, just,
oh, okay.
not yet.
So yeah, it's, there's, if we can model